What if I told you that you could study just 2 hours a day and get the same, if not better results than someone who spends 10 hours at their desk? In this video, we're going to talk about exactly how you can study smarter, not harder, so you can ace your exams without feeling overwhelmed. And make sure you watch to the end, because we'll also be talking about the number one thing most students neglect, which can really make or break your study success. So in order to be able to study effectively, we need to know what effective studying actually is, and it can be defined by the ability to actively recall and apply information without any prompts or cues, and also to understand concepts and theories deeply enough that you can apply them to practice questions. Many students think effective studying means creating pretty colourful notes with highlighters, colourful mind maps, but these are actually all a waste of time if you can't recall the information. That's the number one most important thing. That's why it's really important to understand your learning style and how you learn best as an individual, because that's going to be the key to effective studying. The brain processes, retains and recalls information differently for everyone, so you really need to ask yourself a couple of questions. Do you have a photographic memory? Maybe you associate information with familiar images, colours or stories. Are acronyms or mnemonics your thing? Or maybe you learn best by teaching others and talking the information out loud. So half the battle is knowing which learning style suits you the best, so you can create a study plan based on your individual learning style, which is going to lead to much more effective studying than just creating pretty notes if that's not how you learn. But before creating the study plan, we need to make sure our environment is set up for effective studying. So I'm going to run through some non-negotiables for the ideal study environment that's going to enable you to focus and really be productive. So the first one is having a clean, quiet space free from distractions. So that means not having any clutter on your desk, making sure that you leave your phone in another room so that you're not tempted to go on it and distract yourself, having a space that's quiet, away from things like TVs, family. If you prefer to study in public, this could be maybe picking a library over a loud coffee shop, for example. The second one is no social media within reach. So that also means not being tempted to go on social media on your laptop just because you've left your phone in another room. I know I've done that before. So you can actually download software that blocks you from going on Instagram, YouTube, so that you can study with 100% focus and actually get more done in less time. My third tip seems really obvious, but hydration, proper sleep and proper nutrition actually play more of a role than you think they would do. If you're not hydrated, adequately rested or properly fed, you're not going to be in the best position to study effectively and make the most out of your study sessions. So it's really important that you get that right. And my last tip, if you're studying at home, is to make your space inviting. Maybe you could buy yourself a nice mug or something to decorate your space, a nice lamp. Having an inviting space really motivates you to sit down and study, and that in turn is going to build habits and consistency and really enable you to have productive, effective study sessions on a regular basis. So before moving on to creating the study plan, we really need to evaluate our priorities and zoom out a bit so that we can see overall what we've got to do in the amount of time available. Because if you create an unrealistic study plan, you're going to set yourself up for failure before you've even begun, and that can be really demotivating. Especially if you're short on time, you need to start prioritizing the most important things and selecting what exactly is worth revising and what isn't. So in order to focus on the material that really matters, I used to use a traffic light system, red, amber and green. So I would highlight all the information that I deemed to be a must know and essential to succeed in the exam. I would highlight that in red. I would highlight in orange all the information that I thought would be nice to know, would be nice to be able to develop my answers, but it wasn't crucial to pass in the exam. And in green, I used to highlight all the information that would be nice to know, extra add-ons, extra details, but is not essential if I don't have time to revise it. And so prioritizing what needs to be revised the most and what really needs to be revised first is going to be absolutely crucial to effective studying, because you're going to be able to see what exactly needs most of your attention and how to divide your time up with the time you've got remaining. Maybe you've only got a couple of weeks left, maybe you've got a couple of months left, but even so, it works for any time frame. Even if you've only got 2 days left, it's very important that you prioritize and that you divide up the time appropriately and create yourself the most effective study plan. Let me know in the comments if you are someone who revises with plenty of time, or are you more of a last minute crammer? I know I used to be someone that left revision to the last minute, and hence why I am sharing my effective study strategy that can really get you through the information if you don't have much time. But equally, this is going to be even more effective if you've got time on your side and you can really create the most effective study plan that enables you to revise all the information. Now, as much as I've said you need to create an effective study plan, you want to avoid over planning and spending too much time creating the study plan. That's a trap a lot of students fall into, is that they actually spend more time planning and making their study plan than they do studying, and that is a grave mistake that if you don't have much time, you can't afford to spend all your time planning. So to avoid spending too much time, I would set yourself a 20-minute timer, and by the end of the timer you must have created the study plan. So now we're going to break down the steps in order to create an effective study plan. So step 1 is going to be deciding how much time you have, whether it's 2 days, 2 months, or a whole year. And you also need to decide how many hours a day you're going to study. This again depends on the time that you've got left available. If you only have 2 days left, you're probably going to be spending most of the day studying, versus if you've got 2 months left, you could maybe do a couple of hours a day. But regardless of the time you've got left before the exam, any more than 7 hours a day actually scientifically produces diminishing returns. So just keep that in mind. You'll actually learn more information in a shorter study session of, for example, an hour or 2 hours with no distractions, in a quiet, inviting space, than you would in a noisy environment, constantly on your phone, spending 10 hours studying. My next tip is to build in breaks. So it's unrealistic to spend a whole 6 hours studying, no breaks for eating, drinking, toilet breaks, even breaks going on your phone. You should allow yourself some time to relax in between study sessions. So make sure you're building those in, about 15-20 minutes, half an hour max, no more than that, and then you can get right back into it and be really focused and productive. And I would ideally study in the morning if your schedule allows you to do that. I know that's not always possible for everyone, but you are so much more productive and so much more focused in the morning than in the afternoon. As soon as you've had your lunch and the afternoon slump hits, it's very difficult to concentrate. You get tired, you naturally get sleepy, and you're just not going to be as effective as you are in the morning. So if you can prioritize studying in the morning, I would do that. I know not everyone's schedule is going to permit that. So it's about also being flexible with your study plan. Sometimes you're not going to follow it to a T, or there's going to be something unexpected that comes up. So leaving a bit of flexibility for you to be able to move things around is also going to be really beneficial and help you study more effectively overall. Another important tip is making sure that you're building in time for exam practice. Obviously, you're prioritizing everything you've highlighted in red, some orange, some green if you have time, but don't neglect the exam practice. That's going to be very, very important, because if you know all the information but you don't have the ability to be able to apply it into an exam question, you're just wasting your time. So make sure you are doing plenty of exam practice so that you're getting familiar with the timings so you don't run out of time. I used to be someone that used to always run out of time. That was one of my biggest failings. So if that's you, make sure you do exam practice. Other people find it difficult to apply the information they've learned to the exam question, and that's where they need to actively practice applying the information to the question. So if that's you, make sure you focus on that. And my last tip for creating an effective study plan is to print it out. If you can't see that study plan on a daily basis, if you haven't got a visual reminder of everything that you have done and everything that you still have to do, you can't cross off at the end of the evening everything you've done, it's not an effective study plan. So print it out, stick it on your wall directly in front of you so that you have got a visual cue of what needs to be done. You're much more likely to follow the plan. You're much more likely to be productive because you've got the extra boost of confidence every day of crossing things off when you've done them. And it also allows you to readjust as time gets closer to the exam, and also reevaluate what's left to do, what's the most important. Actually, I thought this wasn't important, but I actually don't know this theory or concept as well as I thought I might, so I need to actually spend more time than I'd anticipated on that. And that's where having some flexibility in your study plan is going to be really beneficial, because it's going to allow you to then use some of that extra time to spend on things that you didn't think you needed to revise, but turns out you do. And that's overall going to lead to effective studying and being more productive and ultimately succeeding in your exams. Now, it can be really difficult to motivate yourself to sit down and study and have a really effective study session when it's the last thing you want to be doing. But I'm just going to share some tips that really helped for me trying to overcome the procrastination and sit down and really get on with the studying. So my first tip is to treat studying like going to the gym. You're not always going to feel like studying, but it's about following the plan and not following your mood. And so you're not always going to be motivated to study, but if you've got a plan, you need to sit down and be disciplined. And also what used to help me is knowing that this is not forever. It's a temporary thing. It's a temporary sacrifice for a greater goal. So that can sometimes help as well. My next tip is to work with yourself, not against yourself. So if you need to be in your pajamas, cozy vibes with your snack, snacks, do that. If you're finding that home is too distracting with all your family, maybe go out to a library or a quiet coffee shop. If you're finding it difficult to be disciplined by yourself, sometimes having an accountability partner, a study partner can really help, especially if you are someone with a learning style that benefits from teaching other people. That can be really, really useful. But even if you have a different learning style, if just having someone there to study with, make sure you don't chat obviously too much about things that are not to do with the studying, but that can be really helpful as well. If you can't meet up with the person, you could even just have them on FaceTime. This is what my friend and I used to do. We used to FaceTime, so it would stop us from going on our phones. We couldn't use our phones because we were on FaceTime. We would put it on mute so the other person couldn't hear any noise, and we would get on with the studying. And that was really, really helpful, just knowing that someone was there and doing it with you and you weren't alone. So that's something to try if you're struggling to sit down and study by yourself. And also, don't forget, balance is key. So make sure there's time in your study plan to go out and socialize and meet people. You can't be studying all day. So if you're studying in the morning, you could make some dinner plans for the evening with friends, and that means that you have something to look forward to, a reward after you've done the studying, and that's going to really encourage consistency and help you study every single day. It's better to study for 4 hours, let's say. If you have some social plans in the evening, that's going to really motivate you to study in the morning and have an effective focused study session so that you can then reward yourself with your social time afterwards, rather than spending the whole day not seeing your friends because you're busy supposedly studying, but in fact you're just really tired because you've done way too many hours that have not been effective at all, and your productivity is low and you're really feeling down and missing your friends. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can definitely still have a social life while studying effectively. And my last tip is something I really struggled with, which is overcoming procrastination. Just getting started with the studying was really difficult for me. So I'm going to share some tips that helped for me and hopefully can help you if you're really struggling to get started. Once you get started and you sit down and do the studying, it's fine, but it's just overcoming that hurdle to get started that's really difficult, and you're putting it off, and that can be really harmful to having a really effective, productive study session. So I'm going to share my tips. Number one is to start with quick wins. So if you're really putting off doing the hard, heavy load of learning concepts and theories that you haven't at all mastered yet, go for a quick win. Go for something that you already know that you just need to revise a little bit. That can sometimes give you the boost and the motivation that you need to go on to study the harder things. Also, if you have kind of a more ADHD orientated brain, that's really going to help you get started because it's something that you know that you can do, and that's going to really motivate you to go on and do the harder things. Another option is to study your favorite topics first. Now, I don't mean doing this for the whole study plan, especially if your favorite topics are the ones that you've already mastered and you don't need to go over as much as some of the stuff you've highlighted and read. But just at the very beginning for 2 minutes, if it just helps you get started studying your favorite topics, just to get into it, get in the zone, that can really help motivate you to sit down and study and just get over the hurdle of starting. And finally, something I also used to really enjoy doing is actually reverse engineering your study session. And what I mean by that is starting with the exam papers to then identify the gaps in your knowledge. So the questions that you can't do, you can then say, oh, okay, actually, I don't know that topic as well as I thought. I can't solve this problem as well as I thought I could. I can't answer this question in the way that I thought I would have been able to. And so therefore, I need to go back and study this, this, and this. That can actually be a really helpful way of getting started as well, especially if you don't know what to study, if it's all looking really overwhelming and actually you think you need to study everything and you're not sure where to prioritize. Starting with exam papers can be really, really helpful and conducive to effective studying. So in order to study effectively, you really need to making sure that you know your learning style and that you are taking away distractions and that you're building systems that actually enable you to study, and you're working with yourself rather than working against yourself. You're not getting too stressed, and remembering that your best is good enough. I know it's a lot of pressure and I used to sometimes let the pressure get to me, but really this is not forever and your best is good enough, and you have to really believe that. And if you have an effective study plan in place and you're getting on with it and you're putting in the work, there's no reason why you won't succeed. If you don't end up getting into the school or university you wanted, or you end up failing an exam, just remember that rejections and failures are just redirections. It's not at all a reflection of your ability. You gave it your all, you gave it your best. It just means that that path wasn't meant for you and something better is going to come along. You might not think anything's better if that's really the school or the diploma that you wanted, but you'll look back and think everything happens for a reason, and there was a reason that I didn't get what I thought I wanted because I was actually meant for something better. Good luck with your studying and revision. I hope this video has been helpful and has given you some tips and advice on how you can have the most effective, productive study sessions. And they don't always have to be the longest. As long as they are effective, you are putting in the work. Let me know in the comments how your studying is going and any videos you would like to see in the future.